All right, YouTube, let me know down in the comments what I should react to next. Any disaster, any tragedy, anything you want me to watch. Honestly, just let me know. Yeah, if you're new, drop a like. Also, subscribe. And yeah, we're gonna get right into this one. So this one is the 2011 Ride of Steel accident. And I can tell you right now, anything to do with a roller coaster, man, I'm out. Thing is, I could ride all these roller coasters, but my back is just fucked up, man. So it's like, I feel like this topic is something that I don't really have that much experience with, you know, riding roller coasters like that. Obviously, I rode them when I was younger, but yeah, it was very short-lived. Let's get right into it. This is the 2011 Ride of Steel accident, and yeah, I have no idea what this is about, so let's get into it. Let's see what this is about.
On the 8th of July 2011, a guest riding the Ride of Steel roller coaster at Darien Lake Amusement Park in the state of New York was ejected from the ride as it crested a hill. The man hit his head on the roller coaster train and fell to the ground below, dying from his injuries. In the investigation which followed, it was found that he should never have been allowed on the ride in the first place, but that his decision to board the roller coaster that would ultimately kill him had not once been challenged by any member of staff working at the park.
Oh no.
The history of the amusement park at Darien Lake goes all the way back to 1955. That was the year that a large man-made lake was opened to the public near the town of Darien in New York State. Visitors could pay 50 cents to spend a day by the water, picnicking and swimming.
So, okay, when it's a man-made lake, that means that somebody literally wheeled all this water to the lake and then possibly even put fish in the lake for people to catch. It's a man-made lake. Like, I can't even think of any that are near me, but maybe I just don't know.
It was a popular spot, and as the years went by, more and more attractions were introduced. In the 1960s, you could go boating on the lake, fish for trout in a specially stocked pond, ride ponies beside the water, or hire out a camping spot and spend the night. In the 1970s, a series of small rides and attractions were added, including a petting zoo, several water slides, and a miniature golf course. By the 1980s, the humble little swimming spot had grown into a fully fledged amusement park. The first major roller coaster opened in 1982, along with multiple other flat rides. Further expansion in the 1990s saw an on-site hotel, a dedicated water park, and a massive concert venue added to the park's offerings. By 2011, Darien Lake was firmly established as a theme park destination.
That shit actually looks pretty fun. It's an amusement park, but it's also connected to a lake where you can fish, you can camp, you can swim, you can ride horses. That actually sounds pretty nice, I'm not gonna lie. And it's such a stretch for me living in California hearing that, because it's like, I don't think there's any amusement parks that are in an area like that around me. They're always in like a big city, you know what I mean? That sounds pretty cool. That sounds like the best of both worlds.
Superman Ride of Steel, later renamed to simply The Ride of Steel, was just one of several large roller coasters in the park. It was opened to the public in 1999 and was tall enough to qualify as a hypercoaster. It featured not just a 205-foot or 65-meter drop, but several airtime hills and 2 helixes, subjecting riders to some incredible but thrilling G-forces during its 2-minute runtime. From the day it opened, the ride was popular, welcoming thousands of riders each day. Most of these visitors had an excellent time, although there was one serious incident in the very first year of operations. On the 16th of May, 1999, the second day that the ride had been open to the public, a guest was ejected from the roller coaster as it crested one of the smaller hills.
Oh my gosh.
He survived the fall, but suffered multiple hernias that would cause him pain and limit his mobility for the rest of his life.
Holy shit.
It was found that, because of the size of the guest, the lap bar had locked in the wrong position, and had thus failed to keep him secure throughout the ride. Darien Lake, which at the time was owned by Six Flags, was ordered to pay the injured guest $3.95 million, and subsequently made alterations to the restraint system of the ride, including the addition of a supplementary seatbelt. For the decade following this incident, the coaster operated smoothly and without issue. It wasn't until 2011 that the Ride of Steel would again be in the spotlight. In July 2011, Sergeant James Hackemer visited the park with several members of his family. Sergeant Hakama was a veteran of the Iraq War, and in the course of his service had been seriously injured by an improvised explosive device.
Oh no.
The explosion had caused him to lose the
Oh shit. He lost his legs, bro. Fuck.
majority of both of his legs, and had put him into a coma for 2 months, after which he'd had to relearn many basic skills, including speaking and eating. Despite this traumatic life change, Sergeant Hakama remained incredibly positive. Having survived his ordeal, he even offered advice to people in a similar position. Hang on. You can make it. It can be hard, but you get out of it what you put in.
Wow.
Certainly, Sergeant Hakama put in a lot.
Yeah.
Even after his injury, he lived an active lifestyle. He went to watch live sporting events, ate out with his friends and family, and went on bicycle rides with a specially adapted bike. Despite his positive outlook and extraordinary tenacity, though, he did note that it was difficult to adjust to his new life. Visiting Darien Lake Amusement Park, therefore, might well have been a welcome return to normality. He was keen to share a vacation with his loved ones and ride as many rides as he could. Sergeant Hakama, his sister, his 2 young children, and a college-aged nephew checked into the Darien Lake Hotel and made their way into the park at around 2:30 p.m. that day. One of Sergeant Hakama's first stops was a guest information booth, where he asked park staff which rides he could safely enjoy. They offered him a pamphlet containing detailed information about ride safety for guests with disabilities, but he declined to take it, noting that he already had one. The park staff then advised him on the boarding procedure for wheelchair users. In the case of most rides, he would be asked to enter via the exit, where he could then be assisted safely onto the ride. One of the first rides on the itinerary for the day was the Ride of Steel. As he had been instructed, Sergeant Hakama, accompanied by his nephew, entered through the exit of the ride. This allowed him easy access to the boarding area, but also meant that he did not have his height checked by a ride attendant to make sure he was tall enough to ride. As it happened, because of the loss of his legs, Sergeant Hakama was actually too short for the Ride of Steel. Nonetheless, he went through to the boarding area, where he declined assistance from the ride staff, instead allowing his nephew to help him from his wheelchair onto the ride. Once both were seated at the very front of the train, the ride began. A long climb was followed by a plunging descent.
Before we even get into this is already sounding so bad, dude. This just sounds like a freak accident. Like, bro, I didn't know that the guy was disabled. I'm assuming that it's just somebody that's overweight. That was my first thing. That was my first thought is, okay, this is probably someone who's maybe a little overweight and they couldn't close the latch over them properly, so it just flew off. But no, this is an army veteran who lost his legs in war. And this is a very specific scenario, man. I mean, come on. I almost wanted to yell at the staff and be like, what are you guys doing? But dude, they probably had never experienced something like this before.
Twists and turns and a series of camelback hills. As the train passed over the crest of each of these hills, riders would experience a brief moment of weightlessness. It was during one of these moments that Sergeant Hakama was ejected from the train.
Oh my God.
Witnesses report that on the crest of one hill, the hat he was wearing almost flew from his head. As he instinctively reached up to secure it, he was thrown from the car altogether.
Oh
and
my
fell to the ground
God,
below.
no.
Although the alarm was raised within minutes and help was quickly on scene, his injuries were not survivable.
Oh my God.
In the aftermath of the incident, the ride was closed and an investigation was launched. Mechanical defects with the ride or any of its trains were quickly ruled out, and it was determined that Sergeant Hakama simply should not have been allowed to board. Signs at the entrance and exit of the ride area noted, among many other rules, that all riders were required to have 2 legs. It is conceivable that Sergeant Hakama might have missed this stipulation. But why had none of the ride attendants challenged him as he boarded the roller coaster? Sergeant Hakama owned prosthetic limbs, but was not wearing them when he boarded the ride, meaning that the fact that he did not have both legs was readily apparent. Indeed, several ride operators noticed this, but took no action. The report into the accident explored why this might have been the case. It was noted that ride attendants had received training that covered how to determine when a person with a disability could or could not safely ride, and how to approach a guest when they were not able to ride because of a disability.
To be honest, they probably just didn't feel comfortable saying that to him. If I have to be honest, like if I'm just playing devil's advocate, yeah, they probably didn't feel comfortable saying, hey, you can't ride this ride. I don't know how he would have responded, but I mean, if you're in that scenario, you're probably not going to feel comfortable saying that to them because you're going to feel like rude or something. You know what I mean? But it's like, we have to get away from that ideology. You know, just because they're disabled, it's like, nah, man, that would have saved his life.
All attendants on duty were fit and well, could communicate clearly, and had passed all necessary assessments and training courses. Ultimately, it became apparent that although the attendants had passed their training, not enough had been done to reinforce it. Over time, ride attendants had either forgotten what they had learned, or had become complacent about certain procedures, failing to realise how important they were.
Wow.
Assisting a guest who was a double amputee was not something they did every day, and so their recollection and understanding of the correct thing to do was fuzzy at best, an issue compounded by the fact that they were all relatively young. The oldest ride operator was 21, an age at which they might have found it difficult to confront and evict an older disabled war veteran who was confident about riding, especially when their memory of the relevant rules had not been refreshed in months or years. The ride remained closed until later in the month. By the time it reopened, several changes had been made. Signage had been made clearer, and staff had been retrained. Additionally, a new position had been created at the park. Darien Lake now employed an auditor, whose job it was to check that ride operators and other staff had not only completed their training, but that they actually remembered all of the safety-critical parts of it.
Wow.
Sergeant Hackemer's family took legal action against the park, ultimately settling for an undisclosed sum that would be sufficient to provide security for his 2 children throughout their lives.
Oh my God.
While
And
devastated,
he had 2 kids? Oh man. This is sad, bro.
by the loss of the man they love, family members chose to, as much as possible, celebrate his life rather than mourn his death. They noted that, when the accident took place, he had been doing what he wanted to do. The trip to Darien Lake had been a happy event for him, a return to carefree happiness after many years of difficult recovery. Speaking of the incident, his sister said, "That minute he was on that ride, he probably felt the happiest and most normal he's felt in 3.5 years."
Wow. That's sad, man. Dude, he already lost his fucking legs protecting our freedom. Like, bro, are you... Oh, man. You didn't die from the IED blowing up. You die from ride of steel. Wow, and it's a horrible lapse of judgment. I mean, we cover these types of stories, and a lot of times it's an accident or like a mistake. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that was even his doing. I don't know if that was necessarily... I mean, clearly it was kind of the staff's fault, but I don't blame him, honestly. I think most people would have acted the same. If you're under the age of 21, you're going to go up to a veteran with no legs and tell him you can't ride a ride? Probably not. But man, that lapse of judgment literally was fatal. Like, holy shit, dude.